conversation, man. Keep it civil, keep it respectful. If not, I'll mute you and kick you out. I'm just playing. So yeah, just have mad respect, man. He does this out of love for us. And like I said, John, it's always a pleasure to have you. Welcome again. And
Thanks.
go for it, my brother.
All right. So I was asked to talk about voting, which is everybody's favorite subject. And, I mean, it makes sense. It's voting season. Everybody's talking about it. I want to do a little bit of like full disclosure at the beginning, though. I am unashamedly conservative in my political views, and I was a progressive liberal for most of my adult life up until I was in my 30s. And I work for Catholic Answers, and we don't endorse any particular political parties. We stick to the principles that the church teaches, and that's what I do at work. But I'm not on the clock right now, so I can be a little more free about my opinions on things. But I don't really want to talk about my opinions too much, because we're all adults here and you guys can make up your own minds. So I'm going to try to stick to just the sort of principle type stuff that I think is important moving into this election season. And you guys might have heard months ago when the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops met, they had a big discussion, and it made it in the news that the bishop from the San Diego diocese, where I'm located, and the bishop from Tyler, Texas, got into it over whether or not abortion was the preeminent issue, right? And there was a heated debate among them, but ultimately the USCCB as a group decided that abortion is indeed the preeminent issue. There are other issues, but that one is preeminent. And the reason that they said it was preeminent is because you don't have all these other rights and other issues if you don't first have the right to live. And so that's why they are calling it the preeminent issue. So at work, we decided to stick to that issue. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is proportionality, right? So for example, let's say you have two candidates, and one of them is pro-life, but he's like really bad on all these other issues. And then you have another guy who's like really good on all those other issues. Is there can you vote for somebody based on who's going to do the least amount of damage? And I would argue that even if you took all of and this gets to why the bishops said abortion is the preeminent issue, take all the other issues, foreign wars, the death penalty, the number of people who have died in the United States due to coronavirus, whatever it is, none of that comes anywhere close to 60 million dead babies. Not even close. And so that's why they have said that abortion is the preeminent issue. And so that one it's something that I would urge everybody, regardless of where you're at. I'm not super excited about any of the candidates, to be honest with you. I think they're both a couple of clowns. If any of you guys watched the debates last night, it was a pretty embarrassing showing. It was not presidential at all. I think our country deserves better than what we got, but it is what it is. And so, but at the end of the day, I think my opinion is that, I'm more concerned about this particular issue, the right to life. And so that, I could go over the reasons for that, but I think probably as Catholics, you guys have all heard it a million times over, and you probably understand why. And but you may still have questions in your mind about whether or not you can vote for whichever candidate despite their problematic positions on other things. And so I don't want to tell you how to vote or how to make up your mind. What I will say is that the church does place a premium on conscience. And it's something that a certain group of Catholics like to talk about. You need to rely on your conscience when you're making these kinds of decisions, but they leave out, there's a caveat to that. You have to have a well-formed conscience, right? You should be pretty well versed in what the church teaches on these issues that are at play and why the church teaches what it does. And so, for example, the issue of socialism, popes have come out and written papal encyclicals on why socialism is problematic, and the reasons are many. You do have a right to private property, and there are other like peripheral things that make socialism problematic. We have a ton of information on that at Catholic.com, but also I would recommend a book that Trent Horn wrote called Why Catholics Can't Be Socialists, because it is a complicated issue. There's no way, if you got that book tomorrow, I doubt there's any way that you would like read it and really understand it before election time, because it is kind of a complicated issue that requires some thought. But that really is the issue, is taking your time and learning about what the church teaches, because you will have to decide for yourself whether or not you think that these other issues collectively add up to the intrinsic evil of abortion. And I hesitate to call it that, only because I think these women that get abortions, they've been raised in a culture that says it's okay. And so, I mean, it's when that's what they've been taught their whole lives. We have to treat that particular issue with really, really in a sensitive way, because you may be talking to somebody about that, and they may have had an abortion. So when we talk about the issue, we have to be careful. We have to be sensitive. Yes, it's mad. It drives me nuts. It makes me really mad. It makes my blood boil to think that many babies are killed in the womb in our country. But you have to think about the circumstances that surround it, right? People think it's okay. And in order to reach them, we have to be calm, even though, could you imagine, like, you're in World War II Germany and trying to tell, somebody, a Nazi soldier who's totally down with Nazism, that it's wrong to put people in ovens, and the sort of social pressure that comes along with that. Like, it's hard to talk about abortion because people get so heated. And the best thing that we can do when we are talking about that issue is to stay really, really calm. Mm-hmm. Don't let yourself get carried away. I totally get and that's the point I'm getting at. I get the inclination to want to just like be totally outraged by it. But that's something that if we're going to make a dent in this culture and for the pro-life movement, it's important that we approach it in a very sensitive way, and do our best to try to understand those circumstances. So anyway, I can open it up to questions now. I mean, that's really up to Fabian, how you want to do that.
My brother, I am always open to everything. I'm like water. I'll go with whatever environment I'm in, dude. So I'll get that.
I'm drinking beer, so whatever you want to talk about, man.
All right, here we go. So I see this a lot on Facebook. Catholics for Democrats, Catholics, Republicans. Are Catholics supposed to identify themselves as left or right?
No. I think you identify yourself as Catholic, and these parties change over time. There was a time where the Democrat Party was totally Catholic. Well, maybe not totally, but they weren't as opposed. They weren't on the wrong side of so many issues prior, But and they sort of were like the Catholic Party, but the issues have changed over the years. And so, like when they, for example, when the Republicans try to compare themselves to the party of Lincoln, it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, you know, I'm not going to be too critical of conservatives, but you know, the party of Lincoln was the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln was way different than the Republican Party of today. That's not a knock. It's just the truth. It's different. So I don't think that a Catholic can fit into any political party easily or comfortably. I think, and I think that that's good. I think we should be critical of these politicians and the positions that they take, and we should question them based on our, you know, our understanding of the church's social teaching.
All right, that's good to me because like I like what Jesse Romero and Terry Barber say. I'm not I'm not left or right. I'm right versus wrong. And to me, that sums it up pretty cool, man. Because people often think, oh, well, you're Catholic, also that must be Republican, and then they hear Biden call himself a Catholic, and oh, then there must be Democrat. No, at the end of the day, you are Catholic. Christ is our King, and that's who we follow perfectly, man. So
Yep. Amen.
yeah, man. So Christ all the way. So
Oh,
next
oh,
one. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got a question. I know I'm
Go
gonna
for
be
it,
off this
Tito.
in a couple minutes, but yeah, today I had a little incident on my Facebook. I don't know if anyone saw it.
Yeah.
I posted that now these days, when you label yourself as Catholic, a devout Catholic, people start calling you racist, a bigot, and a hater, and they already think in their minds by me saying that I'm Catholic, was like, okay, I'm a Trump supporter. No, I'm not a Trump supporter. I just support whoever has the right mind to run, the office. As what would you do in that type of situation? When
Oh, I
someone
get,
comes up, when
yeah,
someone comes up like that and says, and you say you're Catholic, but now all of a sudden they assume all these other things that come with it.
yeah, yeah. That happens to me all the time. So I totally feel you on that. I typically will try to if somebody makes assumptions, well, first of all, I would ask them, like, I would tell them I'm Catholic. I may ask them, you know, if they say something, I may say, well, what is it that you think Catholics support? Because the Catholic Church proposes principles, right? It doesn't itself endorse any political party. It endorses principles, and how you apply those principles, well-meaning Catholics can disagree on it, right? So when we're talking about, for example, caring for the poor, the Democrats want to do that through social safety nets, right? Welfare, things like that. The Republicans favor letting people keep more of their own money through lower taxes, or at least, you know, some of them pay lip service to it anyway. They don't always do it, which is one of my issues with the Republican Party. But also, in general, conservatives tend to favor trying to train these people so that they can be self-sufficient and not rely on the government. Both of those things seek to help the poor, but they're very different approaches to it. And so on that score, I think, you know, you can say, well, there's this principle, and the principle that none of us can disagree on is that we need to care for the poor. Same with like the global warming debate, for example. You know, somebody will, you know, I told somebody one time that I was, you know, Catholic, pretty conservative, I guess. They said, "Oh, so you don't believe in global warming?" And I said, "Well, you know, I don't believe that the man-made or the man-caused part of it is as extreme as what the other side of that conversation seems to be saying. But it doesn't really matter ultimately, because our faith teaches that we need to be good stewards of the planet." And so if we can be good stewards, and I grew up in San Bernardino County in Southern California. And when I was a kid, I lived up in the mountains. You could see the smog was so thick down in the valley that you couldn't even, it just was like a sea of black smoke in the 80s. And they started, the state of California started getting really strict with air control measures, right? The environmentalists. And now when you go to the mountains in San Bernardino County and you look down to the valley, you can see all the way out to LA, and on a real clear day, you can see Catalina Island, which is, I mean, that's way out it's on the horizon.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 20 years ago, you couldn't see that at all. So I think, like, you know, and that's a positive that's a positive change, you know. So we can get
Yep.
behind environmental issues, and you know, so when people start arguing with you about global warming, it's like, you know, I don't really want to go down that road because I think we should be good stewards of the planet anyway. So, you know, if you
Exactly.
believe that man caused it, but anyway, I hope I answered the question. I guess I think is to try and like drill down. I mean, do it charitably. You sound like a nice guy, so I'm sure it's probably not a problem for you. But just start asking questions. That's the best way to get to the bottom of it. Then you can kind of know what their assumptions are and hopefully clear anything up, you know?
Yeah, is that for me? I look at both sides of the arguments when it comes to what's going on, in the states with the cops and the citizens. I look at both sides and I see what did they do wrong or what the others do wrong or what's going on. And then sometimes they just want me to agree with them, and when I don't agree with them, that's when they start attacking me.
Yeah.
And and it's like, why can't you just look at both sides and find faults at both sides, not just one-sided event?
Yeah.
Situations happen when two things do something wrong.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So I don't get why they want to lean on one way and not lean on the other. We both have. We're. I always say to people, we're humans. We're broken. We have faults. We do things on feelings and reactions. But at the end of the day, we need to come all together and find out what we did wrong, what we can do better, and work together. But when I say stuff like that, people attack. Oh no, you're racist and this and that. Whatever. I'm like, listen, I told you what I believe in. I told you what we need to do, and I think that's the better way to do it instead of just leaning one way.
Amen to that, brother. And the best thing that you can hope for is like, you don't have to change anybody's mind, like right then and there. You know, you don't necessarily have to. I think if you just make your case and say, well, I hear what you're saying. I appreciate it. Here's what I believe. And hopefully you have planted a seed. Like, I think sometimes, we live in this culture where everything's instant and we want to see like somebody just all of a sudden while we're talking to them, a light bulb go off in their head. And they change their mind. It's like, you don't have to do that. You just got to plant the seed and then move on and do what you do. It sounds like you did everything right, man. You just explain it, try not to get emotional in the conversation, just very calmly lay out the reasons why you believe what you do, and then and hopefully it gave them something to think about. But also, I appreciate you being open to listening to other people, because sometimes everybody is susceptible to confirmation bias. We just want to like see or read the things that we already agree with, and that's not a good way to be
either. Yeah, for sure, man. Like when David was saying that stuff, I see some of the arguments there, and my bro knows, when things get a little lopsided, I'll go in there and I'll jump in. You know what I mean? Because I'm always ready for that battle, man. That's just part of my nature. But for me, it's like,
well, let me cut you short real quick.
go for it.
I just got home. I gotta meet with my wife and kids before they go to bed. Thank you for allowing me to join you guys. Keep on doing the good work, and hopefully in the future we can continue more of this.
You know what's up, man. You're always welcome.
Pray for me.
All right, brother. All right. So that was David from Boston. So yeah, man. Like for me, it's just like being called racist kind of just shoots the term Catholic right on the kneecap. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make any sense, because Catholic means universal, meaning we accept all walks of life. So I don't know. It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't. I've never quite. Well, I mean, I've never. Even when growing up, I grew up. I was raised by hippies, so like racism to me is just such a bizarre concept. You're just like, why? What's the like? Who cares?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But then there are issues like, you might run into, like the one I run into a lot is like on the gay stuff, right? People will say to me like, well, I don't understand how you can be Catholic. You used to be such a cool guy, and the Catholic Church hates gay people. I'm like, hang on a second. Catholic Church does not hate gay people, and I'll typically read that section of the catechism where they should be treated like God's children. You know what I mean? And we should be careful how we deal with that issue. And then I will typically tell them, listen, you have to think about it in particular ways. Like people are born, some people are born rich, right? And it seems like they don't have any problems. They got their own kind of issues. Some people are born in war-torn countries or in third world countries to super poor families, or somebody might be born with some sort of a like major birth defect, some debilitating disease or whatever. Everybody carries a different size cross, and some people's crosses are bigger than others, right? But if
Yep.
you accept the premise that Jesus is who he said he is, and that he gave the Catholic Church the authority to carry on his teaching throughout time until he comes again, then you have to accept the things that the church teaches. And the church teaches that that God's plan for human sexuality is this certain thing, that we get married and have children, and anything outside of that is a sort of a deformation. I don't know what's a good word for that. You're departing from God's plan. And so, if you're going to become a follower of Jesus, there are a lot of times things that you have to give up in order to do it. It's a discipline, essentially. And some people are going to have a harder time with it than others, but I think God obviously knows that the bar is really high. That's why we have the sacrament of confession, and just when we're talking to people about these things, we should be kind, we should be charitable, obviously, in everything. And I typically approach it like that. It's like, look, I don't personally have an issue with homosexual people, but I do believe in Jesus, and I do believe that there's something better for you, for all people. But it requires, giving up some things that you have attachments to, and that could be one of them. You know what I mean? That's one of them when it comes to that issue. And typically that diffuses it. You know what I mean? Like, people are still like, I don't agree with you, but you're not as much of an a-hole as I thought you were. You know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, man. It's like people say, oh, the church hates, gay people, blah, 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 blah. It's like, nah, man. The church, it's like you said, the church tries to help out that. And it also calls out the person who struggles with pornography, masturbation, fornication, all of that stuff, man. So I don't really understand that myself. But what about this, man? There's something I think it gets beat down a lot that I don't think people really truly fully understand. When people say, I gotta vote in good conscience. What does that mean? How do you have a good conscience? What are things that we should be conscious about? Like, I have a person telling me, well, the church says vote with my conscience, and my conscience is telling me that saving the planet is as important as abortion. So if it's as important to me as that, then I can't go against that. So I'm gonna vote for the guy that's trying to save the planet rather than the guy trying to stop abortion.
This is why the church, so when people talk about conscience, you have some people in the church who they only talk about conscience. You should vote your conscience. Well, what the catechism says is, the catechism would agree with that, but there's a caveat that it is a well-formed conscience. It expects that when you're voting your conscience, that you have taken the time to understand church teaching on all these different issues, and to understand the gravity of each one. And so that is when we look to the hierarchy of the church for some guidance. And like I said, the USCCB has called the abortion issue preeminent. Of all the things that we are facing, that is the most important one. And so, you can, and to understand that, you should look into what it is that the church teaches about abortion, and maybe even read some articles from the bishops themselves. Will explain why why that is. I mean, it makes perfect sense to me, but I can understand how some people may, it may take them a while to get there.
What are the issues that the church says this is what you need to? Is it the 5 non-negotiables at that point? Is it abortion, euthanasia, stem cell research, cloning, and homosexual marriage?
So
And
those,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
no. And I know you said something earlier about pornography and all that. So you know that there's more than 5, but the preeminent ones, right?
Yeah. So the 5 non-negotiables comes from the Voter's Guide for Serious Catholics that Catholic Answers published but we didn't make up that term non-negotiable. That's actually from a Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith document. You can find it on the Vatican website. I'll have to email you guys the name of the exact document, but they talk about issues that are, that particular document talks about issues that are non-negotiable, meaning there is no, you can't, like, for example, abortion is never okay, ever. Embryonic stem cell research is never okay, ever. Homosexual marriage, never okay, ever. All of those things, those are not up for debate in the Catholic faith. We have set teachings on those. They were given to us by the Lord himself, and the church has maintained those, those principles down to this day. There are other issues that are also non-negotiable, but when it comes to voting, you have to ask yourself, well, are these, like, for example, nobody's talking about, there's no debate among Congress about the pornography issue. As much as I wish there was, there just isn't. Politicians aren't even talking about it, probably because most of them use it. So you have to think about, when you're thinking about the issues that are non-negotiable, you're thinking about the voting issues. If somebody has, we may not even know what Trump thinks about pornography, and based on what I know of the guy, it doesn't seem like he probably has that much of a problem with it. I don't know, though. I don't know what he thinks about it, but it doesn't matter really, because that's not an issue that he's going to pioneer. You know what I mean? But the issue that he does pioneer is the pro-life one. And, people may say, well, he hasn't really done that much, or I feel like he's done quite a bit. He's done more than presidents in the past have done in that regard. And so that's a plus. But then, you have to think about, and then there are other things that I like. I don't like war. And this is the last 4 years has been the first time that I can remember. I'm 47. I'll be 47 this year. And there has not been a single president in my lifetime that hasn't gotten us into a new war. So you have to, but, maybe there are things that, like, I'm not telling anybody here to vote for Trump, right? Oh, well, maybe I am, but because I'm not speaking for
it doesn't
work,
matter. Yeah.
But I think you have to, you have to come to that conclusion on your own. And I think the best way to do that is to read up on the issues that are in play, right? So the 5 non-negotiables, those were a big deal back in 2000, but, nobody's talking about marriage anymore. That ship seems to have sailed. Embryonic stem cell research, nobody's really talking about that anymore, but I think that has a lot to do with the fact that there are ethical alternatives have appeared to be more promising than the alternatives. So nobody's really talking about that anymore. There are other issues. What is it? Euthanasia,
that's a big one.
To find out what your local, or who the presidential candidates aren't really talking about it or debating it. So I don't think it's a huge issue for either one of them. Again, I wish it was, but it's not. So you can kind of take those things off the table. They're non-negotiable, but who you vote for is not really going to make a difference there. So we'll have to think of some other way to make an impact on people in that regard. But and then the other things, like you said, there are other things that are non-negotiable, that don't fit into those 5. So, so you have to base how you vote on the proportionate reasons, right? Do all these other things stack up to the issue of abortion, right?
So
I would argue that they don't.
Yeah, exactly. So what tools do we use to form a good conscience?
The Catechism.
Okay.
Catholic.com. Shameless plug.
There you go. Okay, there you go.
There's plenty of great Orthodox Catholic material out there that you can read, but I would start with the Catechism. And if you don't want to read, the Catechism itself can be kind of a slog, but there is the compendium of the Catechism, which is also very good and about only a quarter of the length, but you will come away with the same information. Basically, it's just it's sort of an abbreviated version of the Catechism that's a lot easier to read. I recommend that one highly. There are the faithful citizenship document that the USCCB put out. I mean, you should probably read it. I don't know how helpful it is for voting, though. I know that's what they intended, and I look at it and I feel like in some ways it kind of confuses things a little bit more. But
Yeah.
I read it when it first came out, and I know they've made changes and improvements to it over the years. I have not read it in a long time, but my understanding is that it is much improved from the original document that I read when it first came out a long time
Mm.
ago. So I might, that's probably worth checking out. I should probably check that one out myself just so that I know what's in there. And then, you know, gosh, abortion being the preeminent issue, though, I would really read up on that one. I would really read up on that one, get yourself familiarized with it, and and then kind of work your way down from there. Just take a look at like what are the issues that are being debated right now. A lot of it's economic, or it's like, with Trump and Biden, if you watched that embarrassing debate last night, they were talking, they did like 20 minutes or whatever from that on like the response to COVID. Well, there's no Catholic teaching on the response to COVID. So
Right.
you have to make up your own mind on that,
Yeah.
It's like in that case, I would look at like, I think on something like that though, proportionate reason maybe is something to keep in mind, like what the church teaches about that, because is the solution doing more harm than the thing that it is, the problem it's trying to solve? So like, for example, we were talking earlier about like the effect that our lockdown policies are having on third world countries, or just the effect that it's having on people here. Suicides are way up. Alcoholism is way up. Um, uh, spousal abuse or domestic violence, is way up. Depression, all these other things, people's livelihoods are being wiped out. So, those are all things to consider. Is the solution that the politician proposed worse than the thing that than the problem they're trying to solve?
Mm.
But there isn't like a set Catholic teaching on that. So Catholics are arguing about, should I wear a mask? Should I not wear a mask?
Yeah.
All of that kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, the church isn't really going to help you on that, because there's not really there's not really any kind of set teachings on those things. Well-meaning Catholics can disagree on those kinds of things.
Well, I'm glad that you pointed out the quote unquote fine non-negotiables. I know that you started off with abortion as one, and you also said that it's the preeminent one. I was on Facebook the other day with somebody, like I was saying, I gave them the example. I said, does one of these issues outweigh the other? Like, does immigration outweigh the abortion issue? And for Catholics, the answer would be no, right? The abortion is the number one issue. So I told the guy, if one president says no to abortion, but is for traditional marriage, and the other one says yes to abortion, but against traditional marriage, then who would you vote for? One issue is more important than the other.
Yeah.
One outweighs the other. One is, what do you call it? What's the word I'm looking for? The lesser of the two evils, right? The lesser of the evils. Can you break that down for me, bro?
Well, that's what I mean when I'm referring to proportionate reason, right?
Exactly. Okay.
It does so you have to look at both candidates and the list of, you could even write a list of like the things that they support, and you can look at them side by side and see if, you think that one is going to do much worse damage than the other, right? Because we're never going to have a perfect candidate this side of heaven, and once we get to heaven, we're not going to need candidates. So there's never going to be a perfect person that Catholics can vote for. Even,
Yep.
Look at Joe Biden. He says he's Catholic.
Yep.
You know what I mean? You would think
Exactly.
that his conscience would be well formed, but he takes a position on abortion that's just totally not in line with church teaching. So, it's never okay abortion is never okay, but he's for whatever reason supports, funding Planned Parenthood and all this other stuff. It's just crazy. I don't even understand how how you can arrive at that conclusion. But that's not the kind of argument that I run into. People will acknowledge, yeah, he's wrong on that, but all this other stuff, global warming, foreign policy, all these other things. That's where you're going to have to. That's where your conscience comes in. Do you understand all the issues? You should know your faith pretty well. That's what it means. That's what a well-formed conscience means. Your faith, the principle that the church proposes. Mm-hmm. And then you make a determination based on how your conscience moves you. Because like I said, the church proposes principles, and well-meaning Catholics can differ on those things. But again, I would argue that you can lump every single other issue all together, and it doesn't proportionally add up to 60 million dead babies. It just doesn't, in my opinion.
No, and that's what exactly I'm saying. I'm sorry, but Trent Horn was hit with that one question about, how come abortion is the hot topic now and it wasn't 100 years ago? And Trent Horn answered that, 100 years ago, we would probably be talking about some kind of like slavery or some other stuff like that would take issue, because abortions weren't happening as readily as they are now. So, right. So slavery would be the issue. Now abortion is the issue. That's the front thing. We can literally decide in this election if we stop abortion. Right. If we continue this for another 40, 50, 100 years, whatever, or we stop it and get it into motion now. So my question, sorry, go ahead, John. My other question now is, do Catholics have to vote? Do they have to vote for this party or that party? And do you consider a third party a waste of vote, to where we could maybe just say Trump might be the guy to overthrow this thing? Should I waste my ballot on a third party? What do you think, bro? Okay,
so this is an area where the Catholic Church does not have, so I'm departing from what the Catholic Church teaches, and I'm giving you my opinion. So I want to make that clear, right? The church does not tell me who to vote for. They just propose the principles, right? So I think voting for a third party, if your conscience moves you to do that, like you just can't stomach Trump and you don't want to vote for Joe Biden either, I think you can vote for a third party, and in good conscience, if that puts your conscience at ease and you feel like that's the only choice you have. I would argue, kind of like what you said, that it would be a waste of a vote. But then, people, you get this argument all the time. Well, if everybody thinks that, and if everybody didn't think that, then, more people would be likely to vote for the third party. And it's like, well, that's possible. But in my lifetime, the only third party candidate who got even close to being able to make a legitimate run at the presidency was Ross Perot. And I voted for that guy because when I was a teenager, I was not a practicing Catholic. I was an atheist, but I didn't like the Republicans and I didn't like the Democrats. The Republicans just didn't seem to line up with what I believed at the time. And the Democrats reminded me of the guy that runs for school class president that just tells everybody votes for him because he promises free pizza. And so I've never voted. I mean, even when I was a progressive liberal or considered myself that, I never voted for Democrats because that's my opinion of that party. They promise a lot of free stuff and they give it to you, but it's always off of somebody else's back. And the Republicans always kind of seem to be like the party of the rich people. So, I was a little confused by them. I was a lot confused by them as well. So, but the point is, Ross Perot was the only one that got close and he got smashed. I mean, he didn't even make it. He dropped out, then he got back in because of the polling. He was the closest one that I can remember. Nobody since then, and that was back in the 90s, early 90s. And nobody since then has even made a legitimate run. So if you're thinking about voting for a third party candidate, ask yourself, if I vote for this person, does that take away from one or the other guy? Does it, like, for example, if I vote for this third party candidate, who's that taking votes away from? Is it taking votes away from Joe Biden, or is it taking votes away from Donald Trump? And then which one of those guys is worse, right? It's a cluster. I feel for people who are in that position where they just can't stomach Donald Trump. I understand the reasons why. He's not a perfect candidate. When he was running for the Republican nomination in 2016, I didn't like him, and I still don't like him. I don't like his Twitter feed. I don't like the way he talks to people. But
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for him this time because there's not a third party that really represents what I believe anyway right now. Not, at least not any closer than Trump does. And also I'm afraid of the alternative if Joe Biden wins. It's not going to be the end of the world if Joe Biden wins. We've survived 8 years of Obama. We can survive. So I'm not like, the older I get, the less I'm like, think that these elections are the end of the world. But what you said about having a legit chance at making some real inroads for the pro-life movement, I think that's important, because take a look at all the judges, not just the Supreme Court, but all the federal seats that Trump has filled since he's been president. They're all pro-life.
Mhm.
It's not just that Supreme Court, those Supreme Court seats. It's the lower stuff too. And really, you should be concerned about that all the way down the ballot. Like, read up on the candidates. Don't just vote all Republican or all Democrat. If you're too lazy to do that, if you're too lazy to do the homework on that, or you're too busy or whatever, maybe it's better not to vote. I don't know. But the church does teach that you have a civic duty to participate in politics. And so you probably should vote. Yeah.
Yep. And that is in paragraph 2239 and 2240. That's the paragraphs in the catechism that says you do and you should vote, man. We're given this opportunity. You should register. You should get your whole household and vote. Don't just sit there and be a keyboard warrior or a weekend warrior. Get out and vote, man. Make yourself heard. Here's a question.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
And maybe temper your, if you're on social media being a keyboard warrior, then you probably could take some of that time that you would be doing that and apply that towards learning about some of the lower ballot stuff, because all the people that are running for office in those lower seats, they are seeking to move up in the government. Every single person, Joe Biden, all of them, they all started in these lower elected positions and then worked their way up to the Senate or the presidency or whatever. I mean, you have outliers like Donald Trump, who's never been in politics before. But most of them started in these lower offices. And so if you can vote vote your well-formed conscience, even at those lower levels, you're still doing good for the country.
Well, after this, I don't think anyone can say that they don't have a well-formed conscience, bro. So after this, everyone already has a well-formed conscience, because John is giving you the 100% truth, man, right now. Here's Rosie's question, and I'm gonna kind of alter it. So sorry, Rosie, if I add a little to it. You have the church, and it says, well, you can't say that we can't endorse any candidate for whatever reason, right? For the tax reason, whatever. We can't endorse a certain candidate. But here we got a person like Father James Martin speaking at a Democratic platform. But then we have a person like Father Altman who speaks his mind. And that priest gets called out and blasted, bro. Now here's the question. Is the church partially responsible for what we are dealing with right now, and this whole division that we're seeing, not just in our country, but in the church, that it seems like you have a Father James Martin that gets a green light and a Father Altman who gets censored? Why? Are we causing this ourselves, man? Or the church officials not coming out and saying, hey, Biden is actually not in communion with the church. You have some, but not a lot, man. What the heck is going on?
Okay, so let's start with the particulars of the situation, because Father Altman, in my understanding, is a parish priest.
Yeah,
correct.
I believe so. Yeah.
Father James Martin is a Jesuit. So
Mm.
in his diocese, he is not subject to the, he can't be suppressed by the bishop there. But a
Mm.
bishop can, and I do know of some bishops. I don't want to name any here, but I can tell you from my line of work and the people that I have talked to and met, the bishops that I have talked to and met, there is a number of them who have said he may not speak in our diocese.
Mm.
So we can't silence him, but we don't want him speaking in our diocese,
Mm.
right?
Okay.
Now, Father Altman was a parish priest. He got the smackdown from his bishop,
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily because he is wrong on some stuff. I don't know the particulars, but I do know like I've listened to conversations about it. I've been really busy lately, so I don't know the exact reasons, but there was some stuff that he said in that video that went viral that was problematic, even though in general, I only watched it once. I agreed with what he said. However, saying that, people who vote for Democrats are going to hell. I mean, it's essentially what he's saying. Like, I don't think that we should speak about it like that, because the church does not make pronouncements on who goes to hell, right?
Right.
And the only thing we know is that we don't even know, like, let's say my grandma passed away a few years ago. I don't know if she's in heaven. I have hope that she is, but I don't know that for sure. The only people I know for sure are in heaven are the ones that the church has declared to be saints, right? So we
Canaanites.
have some
Yeah.
guarantee from the church that these are the people that we know for sure are in heaven. But for the most part, we're not going to really know who made it and who didn't until we get there ourselves. And so even though I agree with Father Altman in principle, and I have this issue with other people too, like I don't necessarily disagree with anything Taylor Marshall says, but I don't like the presentation. I think the division in the church is not a cause of what's going on in our nation. I think it's a symptom. And I think a lot of it has to do with people putting their political leanings before what the church teaching. And also, like, you get these people that are having these knockdown, drag out fights. Like, look at Mark Shea on
Yeah.
Twitter. That guy's a
Yeah.
total jerk to people, man. And it's
Yeah.
like, he's got the gall to lecture people on like not being,
Charitable.
in line with Catholic social teaching, but he totally throws charity out the window. So it's like, well,
Ah,
I'm not going to
yeah.
listen to that guy.
I got deleted by him.
Who hasn't?
Yeah.
I got deleted. I got deleted by him and by Taylor Marshall. So
Yeah.
I mean, for totally different reasons. I
Yeah.
don't know Taylor Marshall. I know Mark, because the first project I worked on
Yeah.
at Catholic Answers when I started there was one of his books, so I had to deal with him. That was my first dealing with anybody
Mhm.
in the Catholic apostolate world, and it was not good. So
Mhm.
people say, "Oh, he just went off the deep end recently." No, he went off the deep end a long time ago.
Right. Right.
But I'm not a fan. But when it comes to the division in the church, like I said, it's like is it a symptom or a cause? It's kind of like does heavy metal music make kids want to kill themselves, or were these kids all messed up and then they started listening to heavy metal and kill? Like, is it a symptom or a cause? And so I would argue that the problems that we are having in the church right now are a symptom of what's going on in our culture generally. And I think it has to do more with people abandoning the principles of the church in favor of their their established political leanings.
Mhm.
But then it has to do with the church confusing people. The church is
Mhm.
always, I mean, like, you have the catechism. So like, if some bishop says something that's weird or whatever, just ignore it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I mean, you have to be respectful of your bishop, especially if you're in that particular diocese. But if he says something that doesn't sound right to you or doesn't line up with what's in the catechism, I mean, I'd go by the catechism.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
But if you hear something like that, are you to like write a letter for correction, or do we just sit back and watch it?
write letters to your bishop. You have a right and a duty to make your opinion known when you feel like that the bishops are losing their way or whatever. And like for example, Bishop Barron was doing all these things on the rise of the radical traditionalist movement or whatever, and he was talking about the reasons why people are drawn to this and that stuff, and like, here's how we need to talk to them and this and that. And I'm thinking to myself the whole time, it's like, people are frustrated with the way the hierarchy has conducted themselves. So if you want to make inroads and calm people down and put a dent in that movement, I published the McCarrick report.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, show us that you're taking concrete steps to reform yourselves. But at the end of the day, like, don't focus on that too much. Focus on Jesus, right?
Yeah.
The church is the steward of the sacraments. If you don't like the way they're handling money, or you don't like what they're doing, give the money somewhere else.
Yeah.
You don't have to give it to, like when my wife and I give money to, when we stopped writing checks to the Diocesan Development Fund because we didn't like what they were doing with the money, but we still are tithing to our parish. And what we're doing is, for example, in the nonprofit world, you can, when a donor gives you an amount of money and they restrict it to something, it becomes it's a restricted fund, right? They have to spend it on the thing that you said for them to spend it on. So when I write the check and put it in the basket on Sunday, my wife writes in the note on the bottom of the check that this is to pay the gardener, or this is to pay the electric bill, or whatever. But it's, and so we'll be very specific about what it's for when we when we put it in the basket. And then the money that I used to send to like Peter's Pence or whatever, I just started sending it to like other Catholic organizations that I think are doing good work, especially charitable ones. There's lots of good groups out there that are doing this stuff, So, but don't do it without telling your bishop what the problem is.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Don't just make that move and not make your opinion known to your bishop. Write a letter to your bishop, tell him that, until we see that the church is making steps to reform this or that, whatever your issue is, I'm going to be sending my money over here. And when I see some progress made in this particular place, then I will. But like I said, to get back to the original question, I don't think the confusion in the church is a cause. I think it's a symptom.
All right. That's an awesome answer, man. See, I'm telling you. Is there any other questions from you guys? Anyone have a question? You can unmute your mic right now and blast away. Because my next question would be, what's up with the stem cell and the injections and all of that stuff, man? What's your opinion on that? If no one has a question.
Stem cells, like, you mean like embryonic stem cell research?
Well, like they're talking about injections, school injections for kids and all this other stuff. Should we be looking out for that, and stem cells and all these other things that are in these vaccinations and all that?
Well, if you're talking about like the vaccine for the coronavirus, I agree with Bishop Strickland on that. If it's made from aborted fetus stem cell lines, I wouldn't do it. But we did publish an article on Catholic.com that says that, you're not directly, it's not direct like material cooperation. And so you could theoretically get the vaccination. However, in the same piece, it says that by not doing it, it's a form of a protest, and that should be taken. That should be a serious consideration when you're deciding whether or not you can cooperate in that. I'll send you an email with some of the stuff we've talked about later, and you can send it to everybody. With the article in it, because I'm not going to do it justice. It's written by people much smarter than me, and you can get more detail on that. But my understanding is that you could potentially get one of these vaccinations depending on the circumstances in which it was developed. But again, this gets back to having a well-formed conscience, understanding, the different levels of, material cooperation, and proportionality, and then making a decision for you and your family based on the principles that the church has taught.
That's dope. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I got
I know it's a little bit wishy-washy, but that it's the church teaching there is that, that's a complicated issue. So it requires a lot of research.
no, for sure. Because someone just hit me up right now. What about the vaccines that are using aborted baby parts? As Catholics, should we refuse to get them, and for our children? It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, I would recommend not getting them as a form of protest. But like I said, there is an
Yeah.
argument that it would be okay. And so I will send you
Yeah.
I'll send you a link to that article, and you can send it to everybody on the list, because I think it would be helpful for them to read.
Okay, that sounds good with me. Got time for one more?
What time is it? Yeah, I can do one more. My wife just walked in. I told her I was going to cook dinner. So
Yeah, I was about to order a pizza for you, bro.
we had
What
that
about,
last night for the debate.
I said if I can send you beer, I can send you a pizza, bro. There it is.
All right.
So we have some people that say, "Oh, your president is supposedly pro-life, but he is also for the death penalty. Oh, he's supposedly pro-life, but doesn't want to do anything with immigration and borders. What does the church teach about immigration, borders, death penalty? Rapid fire, if you could, man."
So well, you guys saw the recent change to the catechism on the death penalty, and the Pope used this word inadmissible. The death penalty is inadmissible, which no one has seemed to really be able to figure out what exactly that means. I think that the Pope is against the death penalty, and he's kind of skirting the edge as close as he can get on that, because he can't come out and say that the death penalty is intrinsically evil. That would be at odds with everything that the church has taught over the last 2,000 years.
Amen.
The governments do have recourse to the death penalty. It depends on like I said, it depends on the situation. Now, when it comes to voting, okay, the death penalty. How many people have been put to death? Do you know the answer to that? How many people have been put to death? 1,000? It's like 1,000 over the last year. Oh, okay. So my wife just told me 1,000 people have been put to death since 1973. Does that, now when we're talking about proportionality, how many babies have been aborted since 1973?
Yeah.
60 million.
60
So
million.
1,000, 1,500 versus 60 million. Come on. I mean, like so that's what I mean by proportionality. It's like, okay,
Exactly.
you talk about the death penalty all you want, but the death penalty is like the least of our problems.
Exactly.
Immigration issue, I think, is a little bit, that one's a little bit sticky. So the governments do have a right to secure their borders and their autonomy, and but they have to. But we should also, like, if people are coming over here because they can't, what was the number?
1976 to 1500.
Oh yeah, it's 1,500 since 1976.
Yeah, I
but
just saw it right there. Yeah,
yeah.
1,500.
Yeah. So anyway, when it comes to the issue of immigration, I try to be open-minded on that one. So let's imagine that we were living in Tijuana, and we're fathers. We've got a wife and a few children that we have to support, and there's literally no work there, and you're living in you've seen if you've been down there, they've got those hillsides, and they've got all these kind of houses made out of asbestos, sheetrock and stuff. And it's I don't blame those people for trying to get across the border and to provide for their family however they need to. Right.
Mm-hmm.
My heart goes out to those people. The thing that I wish that the bishops would do is not only, lobby to make it maybe the immigration process a little easier here, because I think people need to follow the law.
Mm-hmm.
They need to do it the right way, but doing it the right way here is really, really difficult in some cases. So maybe there are things they can do to make it a little bit easier for people, so that they can be, not have to come over. The issue is, we don't secure the border. They come over here, but then they got to kind of live in the shadows because they could
Yeah.
get picked up at any time and tossed right back. And some, you know, and I don't like that either. So I think that, you know, we have to find some way to make it a little bit easier so that they can come over here legally and not have to live in the shadows like that. But also, like, why aren't the bishops, like, do you ever hear of the bishops pressuring Mexico to get their stuff together?
Mm-mm.
And like because all the issues down, they have all the same you know, natural resources that we have,
Yeah.
and almost as much coastline, like, you know, I mean, Mexico could be doing really well, but I think they don't do really well because they've got a corrupt government.
Yeah.
And so, like, why are the bishops not pressuring the government down there to reform and make the living conditions better for their people, you know, or at least try, you know, and spend as much time talking about that as they do about, you know, like, let's open the borders and let people go where they want to.
Right.
At least that's the impression that I get when I listen to a lot of the bishops. Sometimes certain bishops, I don't want to name any names, but when they talk about immigration, I feel like their positions are incoherent. It's like, well, what are you saying? Do you mean open up the border and just let everybody across? I don't see how we could sustain that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I also don't want to see, like, you know, we should be compassionate toward those people who are, like, you know, maybe their families are starving and they're just doing what they need to make ends meet. I can't fault anybody for that.
Exactly. I mean, we got here the same way that a lot of people got here. And we got here because we recognize the opportunity and the blessings that are in this place. You know what I mean? So, yeah, man, I don't want to deny anyone either, but yeah, I also don't want no kids dying in the desert or being sex trafficked or in some cases, you know, killed and stuffed with drugs and shipped over either. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
See the
that's
last
not
Rambo
cool.
movie, dude? Put the smackdown on those people.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, we need more. We need more
Rambo.
Rambos.
No, yeah, that may not be the most Christ-like thing to do, but it did feel, it was a little satisfying watching it, at least in the movies.
Exactly. It's America. All
Yeah.
right, cool, man. Well, I want to give you a big thanks and a shout out for sure for staying with us. And man, it's a really good discussion, bro. And I hope that a lot of people see the necessity of having to go out, register, and vote, and get it going, man. Get it going.
Yeah, I just want to say one last thing. I don't know where, you know, where everybody stands on the political spectrum, but I do feel like, you know, if we can all do our part to make political discourse a little more civil, we could do that, at least affect our own circles of influence, you know, be more charitable when we have these kind of discussions. Because the stuff I'm seeing on the internet right now, I don't think anybody's convincing anybody of anything. It's just a lot of vitriol and anger. And I feel like, you know, if you want to make an impact, I think charity, you know, being charitable and calm in those kind of situations will make you stand out.
No, that's exactly, dude. And people need to be a little bit more like me and show a little more civility, bro, because I'm all about that. You know that, John? No,
Yep.
man, but all right, well, we'll close out with a prayer. Do you mind closing us out?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's shoot for it, bro.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Hey, God bless you guys. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man. Hopefully we see you again.
All right, definitely, man. Anytime you want.
Oh, yeah. I'll see you tomorrow. All right.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
All right, bye.
Bye.